It's so funny how to be consistent is everyone's enemy, and I decided to be consistent with this YouTube video thing. And so, welcome to my YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm super excited to be doing another episode of this YouTube channel where I'm going to be talking about my journey as a feminist. We're going to be talking about how I became a feminist, how I started my journey as a feminist, all of that stuff that people really want to know about how I became a feminist. Some berries, guys. You want to eat berries? I got some berries from the store and some wine, of course. And you know what is funny? Let me show you the wine. So it's Menster 2023. I don't really know so much about wine, but I know a bit about wine because I drink a lot of wine. And I just took just these and I was knocked out. So sometimes if you want to know about wine, you want to check the bottle, the base of the bottle. People say the deeper the base, the better the wine. But yeah, this is deep enough. Most flat wines, people say it's actually rushed or just made in a hurry for industry consumption or for larger consumption, but I don't know. And of course 12.5%. But yeah, what I wanted to show was I just took just a bit of these and I was knocked out. So I wonder, people who drink like a whole bottle of wine in a day, you guys are superheroes. Yeah, berries and wine, foods of a feminist. So when three white girls hang out, what are they gonna eat? I was playing a game and people say a glass of wine and 3 slices of olives and cheese. That is not so true. So the feminist dish, ladies and gentlemen, berries and wine. As we talk about all of the things that has informed my feminist journey and how I got to where I am today. I want to spin around financial discipline, mental health discipline. It's like a whole 360 game if you really want to think about it. If you want to talk about who you are, how you can be like a better version of yourself. You also want to talk about how everything makes sense, including your overall health, your education, your interaction, your social interaction, what you believe in, your education, your religion, your culture, what you see the environment as. So it's part of like the overall sum total of the things that make one a person. You get what I mean? And so this is like, maybe you want a close-up view. This is the sand of my mother's grave, and it is really important to me that I'm wearing this chain right now because my mom informed a lot of my feminist journey, even though she might not realize that she did. Growing up, I was not born as a feminist, even though we all are. We were born as feminists. If you're born as a woman, you're supposed to be a feminist, But the environment that we grew up as Nigerians would, quote unquote, tell you that your body is a destiny and that you cannot really change it. It has been designed for you and you have to live it up, So that has to do with how, the patriarchal structure of the environment works. It's like when you grow up, you have this template. It's like a layout of something that you should be or something that you should not be. You get what I mean? And that was why in one of my videos on TikTok, somebody was saying, is womanhood performative? Yes, it is performative. It's a role. It depends on your culture, your society, where you have been nurtured. When you grow up, your humanity is kind of, predefined by some of these things. And so it is performance. It's the things that you're willing to do and the things that you're not willing to do to be able to say you are woman enough or not woman enough. Growing up in that environment and seeing that most of these roles were performative, I saw how women were chained in, marriages and relationships, in the society in general. Mom was a woman leader. She, quote unquote, was someone who a lot of women in my church looked up to. And my mom was working with the government. She was educated. And so she would be at home on a Saturday and random people would just come and knock, and it's a woman from church. And she's in the house, she's crying. And the way my sitting room is set up is like, there's a couch somewhere and then there's the dining table somewhere. So I would sit by the dining table. My mom is in the other section of the living room, but I'm in the dining table trying to do my assignments or just get busy and act like I was busy. But I was listening to these women. I was hearing the stories that was coming out from the mouth of these women, and my heart broke. The way these women described their relationships with their husband, the way they described what they were going through, I just hated men, and I just hated that there were a certain demographic of people that would do these things to women. And I'm not saying it was just one person. Day in, day out, different women came in, different stories. The enemy was the man. Now, of course, I did not just stand up from that dining table and begin to say, oh, I want to be a feminist. I wanted to fight. But my environment shaped who I was because, first of all, I was able to ask questions. Curiosity and research is like one of the things that you need as a feminist. As somebody who wants to start this journey as a feminist, I think you really need so much of curiosity and research. And that was things that I had when I was growing up. Aside from the fact that I was privileged enough to grow up reading a lot of my parents' books, because my mom was a scholar, my dad was a scholar himself, and they had so many books. And, there was no phone. We were just growing up. We were kids, 16, 17. Oh, okay, I had a phone at 16, 17. But prior to that, really, I would read so much of, books, the ones that I found interesting and the stories were resonating with me. I would read it. Books like, The River Between by Ngugi wa Thiong'o were books that already are found in my dad's shelf as far back as when I was 13. And I read it, it didn't make sense. But, I read it anyway because I still remember when I was part of, I think it was circumcision or something about that had to do with the period blood or something in that book that really caught my attention. And I think I should really order that book again and read it now that I'm matured to see the concept at which that was written. And so now you understand how I grew up in the sense of the privilege that has to do with books. There were so many books and I had a will. Another thing that you should have as a feminist or navigating the world of feminism is the will, the desire to want to apply, the consistency, be willing to apply the consistency in trying to read. Aside from, just looking for novels that were interesting, I also had the consistency of reading books that I did not find interesting from the beginning. You get what I mean? I tried to read books that were boring, books that were fiction, biography. I did not know that these characters that I was building was quote unquote informing who I was. It was informing, how I was going to understand and be able to disseminate knowledge later in life. And I'm so happy that I grew up in that kind of privilege. And one thing I do, or I'm going to advise you to do, is to buy books. Keep books in the house. And, even if you're going to limit your children, to screen time or even give them access, if that's what you're all about, it should be intentional access, things that are shaping your children for the better good of their future than just entertainment or keeping them busy for the time being. Because right now, reading those books actually made my future better. It was not just the entertainment that I was getting as a kid. I also was able to understand something that is shaping my future and even giving me a voice in the global world. So, my experiences also were part of the things that shaped my, journey as a feminist. Growing up and realizing that I was just so smart, and not just so smart, I was not what men liked. Even as a kid in high school, I already saw how the role that society gave each and every one of the gender was affecting us or affecting me. I was brilliant, but I was not categorically beautiful in the sense that, schoolboys would want to approach. I was direct. I was strict. When you come to me, I want to ask you, why did you feel, so I was intimidating according to the men that saw me intimidating at that particular time. And so the knowledge that I had was affecting me in the sense that men did not approach me. They were quote unquote, I don't want to say intimidated, but they did not find me as an easy bird to shoot. And so with that, I started to feel like, okay, maybe I was going to use my brilliancy or my knowledge to be able to get men. Maybe it was a good idea. Maybe it was not a good idea, but I started to, help boys with their lessons or their assignments or with their notes. And I started to get a little bit of frivolities from men, but it was nothing as compared to what society told me that it was. There's something called the Cinderella effect. I always talk about the Cinderella effect. It's like when you're growing up as a little girl, it's all, beautiful. It's like, oh my God, a man is going to come meet you as poor as you are or as rich as you are, no matter what you're doing, even if you're just like Cinderella and being, working so hard as a maid in your stepmother's house, a prince will come for you regardless. And it's going to be a prince in a shining armor and it's going to be so rich. And all of those things that, society made it look like men wear. It's like Sherry coating that men are the ones that, are the savior, the knights in the shining armor, the men that would come to like breach you, So we all, as young girls, had that kind of template growing up. We had that kind of, orientation growing up, that is what we are going to experience when we get into the dating world or when we start to approach men. And the crazy thing is that it was not really so. Society also had their own way of differentiating women into categories. They had words for thick, for fat, for brilliant, for dumb, for blonde, for white, for black. They began to categorize. And then with this category, you begin to realize that you are not so much up the ladder in this category. You're not up in the hierarchy. As somebody who is petite and, struggling to be better in school and not doing makeup and not caring about materialistic stuff at that particular time in my life, I did not get the great guys. And even the brilliant guys also did not come to me. They also went for a certain type of lady. And I started to feel bad about, not being the one that men want and stuff like that. But again, I was not really pissed. I didn't put it to heart. And even on the days that I put it to heart, like crying and writing in my diary that everybody has a boyfriend, I don't have a boyfriend. Now that I check it, it's so ridiculous. But again, it's those experiences that shape you for you to understand that this world is never really what we thought it was. And so really, to be honest, I would try to get a boyfriend, and I wouldn't get, although it was not something that informed me, I went about doing other things. It made me understand the environment. I wasn't getting a boyfriend. My pretty friends also were not getting a boyfriend. And even if they were getting a boyfriend, they were fighting with their boyfriend or they had issues with their boyfriend. It was just like all the shiny armor story was a facade. It was as if they were trying to brainwash us into something that was not real or that was not true, or that the reality of that stuff was not something that was achievable. And I did not see, the women in my environment get married to men in shining armor. My dad died early, and so I did not grow up to see that my dad was a shiny armor. Although he took me to school, my dad was a really, a very, very important person in my life, and I would never not stop talking about him. He would take me to school on his shoulder with my sister. During break, he will come and help me do my assignment and correct the ones that I failed in class and teach me, and then he will proceed to work. And all of those things that he was doing were part of the things that actually informed my idea of what masculinity was. But when I grew up, I saw that a lot of men were not putting in the work. They're like, we're not even doing as much as my dad was doing. They were not doing half as much as he was doing. And they had so much audacity, they had so much ego, they commanded so much, from their wives and from their kids. I started to check my environment, my friends who come to my house and tell me about their dad beating their mom. It was such a very chaotic scene to me growing up, and I started to put one and two together and begin to understand the whole concept of what it means to be a feminist. Besides that, I also was checking why consistently, every time there was an issue with gender, the men were the antagonists. I had this antagonist and English is not my language. I had that antagonistic view of what men are and who they really stand for and what they really uphold as core value to them. And I started to see that there was a big shift from their reasoning, and to what they love and to what they deem essential to them. And I started to see that women were not part of this essentiality that men uphold. And again, I was like, hold up, something is happening in this society that don't make sense. And when I eventually had a boyfriend, they would be cold and they would be hot and they would probably want sex, and they were always in trouble, or you needed to help them financially, or you needed to beg them for their attention. It was something that I did not like as a person. My own human identity was not somebody that would beg for attention. I was not somebody that would tell you to uphold the relationships that are in your life and quote unquote do the responsibilities that are needed of you. But I was part of the society that grew up, and we used my phone to text, oh, call me, this is from my mom's phone, don't call me back, I love you. Thinking that emotions that society sold to women and say emotions are those things that should carry you. And then they told men that being hardcore is the things that should carry you. And those two things that we held even just growing up are so damaging. It is reflecting in the societies today. You see women spending so much money on men, all because they just want a text back, or they just want a perceived a word of affirmation. Oh baby, I love you. And you're willing to do so much, including spending your resources on this man just for words of affirmation. Is the same thing that we are saying, that society sold emotions to women as a role, and aggressiveness to men as a role. And this has affected how the society is being set up in the longer term and in the longer sense. So yeah, back to these berries, more of these berries. I started my book club at 19 years old in Nigeria, and it's so funny because I read so much books. At 19, I had already read more than maybe 2,000 books, because sitting in my house already, we have more than 1,000 books. And when I say I've read all. And this is minus the things I read in my class, in my novel, books that I borrow from friends. And the most breaking epiphany for me was when I went to a salon close to my house, and I met this lady just making her hair, and not a lady, a woman. She was working in the back, but she was reading like these romance novels, and I was so addicted to romance novels growing up. And I will ask her, she's like, oh, I have so much novels. And I went to her house. I'm saying an entire room had books. It felt like the best place I ever was. It's like when you're a kid, you're like, whoa, are these romance novels? And I read and passed time just reading novels. And so, the novels were the same. Romance novel, a guy in a shining armor gets a woman and does the impossible sacrifice, and there's a happy ever after. That kind of thing that romance novels sell to you. That is not the reality. But I need you to know that romance novel is the highest selling genre of novels, just because what they sell to women is an illusion that men are only perfect in romance novels. And so that is the illusion that women are buying from just consuming romance novels, because at the end of the day, they know that the reality is different, is totally different from what is in the novel. And so from combining all of this knowledge to the experiences that I've had, combining, how my knowledge and my intellect couldn't get men. They had their own societal definition of what a submission or a woman that can submit look like, and they try so much to try to get that type of women, or try to force you to be that kind of women. When they saw that I was not a conformer, I was non-conforming, I did not conform to some of those things that they had, even from a younger age, I began to navigate my life by myself. The next thing is identity. Find your own identity. I was living other people's identity because I was living via the lens of the society. The lens of the society being that I had to, pretend like I needed a boyfriend, pretend like I should act. Is that stuff? Is that performation we're talking about? I needed, if I was acting as if I did not have a boyfriend, something was fundamentally wrong with me. I would cry in the night thinking that, oh, I'm 16, I should have a boyfriend. But all of those things are just what society was selling to me. I'm 16, I do not need a boyfriend. I needed to read some damn books, watch some movie, get a hobby, than crying in the night and talking about how I am not loved by people. When at the end of the day, I was just, you know, I'm exhibiting what society has placed on me, that at that age I should already be in a relationship or have a boyfriend, you know. And so the individuality of self comes with your identification. Who are you and what do you want to do? I started to read. I downloaded on my phone. I said I wanted to write because I had a diary. I was always writing in my diary. If I was angry, I would express myself in my diary. You know, I still have those diaries at home. Of course, I don't write so much in my diaries again, but I'm so happy that in the early days of my life, I had a diary that I wrote a lot of stuff about, living, and some of those things I'm going to work on them and publish them as the early diaries of Obidi Ojochidi. These are some of the things that you should do. All of those things that you begin to do begin to inform you, and you can make money off it when you are becoming experienced and seasoned and finely cooked. And then you see that all of those things that you were picking as if they were not so much hobbies, but they were your hobby, they were your interests, they were your passions, they were those things that you like to do. They will inform you later in life and even make you money. You get what I mean? And so that is why it's very important for you to stay true to your own self and to your own identity. It's so important. And when I mean your own identity, I mean who are you in this world, in your own a ball of experiences, in this whole large experiences that you have had. Who are you, and who has this person, these experiences, I would say, has it shaped you in a way that you have been able to identify yourself? You get what I mean? And it's so important that we identify ourselves as people, because it is your identification that will keep you. I've tried so many things, reading science, going to, acting, try to be but my identification still comes with me talking, me sharing knowledge, me fundamentally fighting against social justice, because I have done that so much that it is now my identity. Whether I like it or not, whether I'm tired or not, whether it informs me or not, I just want to do it because that's who I am. And so it is important for you to know your identity. And so also, not just your identity, building around your identity. Consider yourself as a brand. Consider yourself as somebody you are watering, you're pouring life to, you are pouring water to, you are allowing yourself to grow so that it bears fruits, and this fruit can feed you and feed others. You get what I mean? So that is what I want you to consider yourself. And how do you grow? You need to get a book and a paper, a note, a journal. I would never underestimate power of journaling. And it's not just writing about your stories. What do you want to do? When you sit there and I'm like, I want to start a business. What kind of business? You write it down, right? And then you go to think about that business. You go to research. You go deep, right? You try to think about what is in this thing that you want to do that caught your interest anyway. Why is it the thing that caught your interest, right? So do not underestimate the power of holding something that is a journal that you can write down things. Do not, shrink the idea of growing. Always grow and look for ways to grow. Again, I've always said, if you don't have the means to use to go to school or pursue your master's outside the country or even in Nigeria, use non-traditional means like YouTube. Try to do a course online. Try to look for a mentor. A mentor is also so powerful because they help you avoid so much mistakes that will take you so much longer time to achieve. A mentor helps you to, quote unquote, give you advice that can help you not experience things. So instead of experiencing things to learn a lesson, a mentor just teaches you the lesson without the experience. And so it's okay for you to go ahead with that lesson and with stuff that you already know. Questioning your environment is also something that I always did. I questioned my environment. If there was something I did not like, I was always quick to say it. Of course, I did not have friends and people who may like that ideology or the ways that I behaved, but it got me where I am. It still made me get my own kind of people. It's like I went to a church one time in Estonia, and we were sitting, and I think somebody made a very funny joke about the pastor's wife or something, and I had to look at him, and that was my first day in the church, and I'm like, this joke is not funny. Do you know this woman is married? And it was like, but it was just a joke. And I'm like, there's some jokes you don't make. And so instantly I became that guy's enemy, even though it was my first time. And there was something that Anna Yasmin said in her book, A Woman Speak, which is one of my favorite books. She said the best time to address misogyny is the time that is happening. It's the time that it was dished out to you. Because if you left there and you did not address misogyny, you would now have it in your thoughts. And when you have it in your thoughts, it is even more thought-provoking to not have addressed it than to address it. And so, because of that, for me, I like to address misogyny. With every time that you speak, you make yourself stronger. It's like, going to the gym, right? With every day that you take that weight and you use that weight, you become stronger to that weight. The weight did not change. You just change, right? You change to be better in, pulling and carrying that weight. And so that is how it is with feminism too. You get better with every book that you consume, with every questions that you ask, with every bodily identification that you understand with yourself and try to be in tune with your own self. With every motion that you set, you get better. You get what I mean? And so the books that you read, the people that you listen to, the podcast that informs you, your own lifestyle, which is important, the way that you live, also informs the message that you preach. It's like when you're a Christian, they say, let your life be the message. Your life also be the message, you understand? You try to live in a way, you don't come to support women's rights and go to the back and do downgrading things with a man because patriarchy is patriarchy anyway, and you are broke or you are poor or you need to succumb to patriarchy to survive. Then you kind of, quote unquote, reduce the fight to what we have right now. And so evolving as a new feminist is identifying what feminism is understanding who you are, is thinking about how you can add value to yourself as an overall person, is thinking about your network, about your social network, the people you choose to be your mentors, right? The people you choose to listen to, the kind of media you try to consume, all informs your journey as a feminist. And do not be out of touch with other feminist struggle. As a Nigerian feminist or any other feminist worldwide, it is important that you understand other people's struggles. And because you understand other people's struggle, you understand what this oppression that men has dished out to this female gender for a very long time. And this will help you have engaging conversation that will break so much of these issues down to understandable forms. So yeah, from writing and downloading WordPress when I was 16 or 15 and having my own blog and then going online to start a book club that I ran for 3 years, and each month we were reading books, and these books were craftily selected. There were Nigerian authors and there were books that question social issues. I understood that I have grown from reading romance novel and all of those things I used to read as a kid to actually reading social activism, to reading books that were biography, that were socially constructed, that were criticizing social laws and procedures. And then I started to find myself enjoying those books and speaking out. And when I spoke, people started to say, it's like you have something here, you have what you're saying, you have facts, you have data, you need to memorize, you have this good memory. And so I began to understand that all of these things came from the many attitude that I have, the many character that I was able to put in place, the many, it's like building yourself brick by brick. It's like, what are those things that you like to do, and if I like writing, I write on my Medium. When I was writing initially starting up, I just said, I went online, which place can I write? And then I downloaded my Medium and I was writing there. It was as if, nobody's reading my work. But yesterday when I published, this, the trans issue debate we were having with Chimamanda and surrogacy, some people that I don't know commented and they were like, this line is powerful. When I was saying, if you as a feminist do not support trans people, it's patriarchy, it's like feminist in, it's like patriarchy in drag. And she's like, oh, that's a powerful line, I really like that. 5 years ago I thought I was going to write something like this and somebody was going to comment. So more of it comes with the doing, with the understanding, and with more that you do, the more you learn, the more you know, the more you research, the more you find yourself in these spaces. And so I hope that as you're starting out as a feminist, you have the will and the strength and the power to be able to put all of these tools together, from what you listen to, from what you consume, from the people that you identify with. You'll be able to craft out your own niche. And in this niche, you'll be able to grow it so much that it becomes so powerful that people resonate with you. The thing is, give yourself time. And in that time, learn to grow, learn to add value. Just like me in this house, when I wake up every day, I try to ask myself, what are those things that I need to do to add value to myself? Like, number one, as a feminist, you need to be independent. You need to have your own money, right? Because if we're fighting for equality, for us to have the same, right that men have, it means we should be able to work. And in this work, we should also be able to know it so much to make money for ourselves, to sustain ourselves, and to help us. So what I do, I put my career as a structure, I put my education as a structure, I put my social life as a structure, I put my nightlife as a structure, I put my finance as a structure, and then I begin to work on all of them individually and continuously. And so that is how you will start yourself as a feminist. And so from that on, you'll be able to understand how you can carve your own niche and be your own person. And I hope that I did not bore you with this conversation talking about feminism. See you. See you next time, ladies and gentlemen. Do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and share my YouTube channel with other people. Next time, we're going to be talking about this individual niche, like finance, like your social life, how to build all of those aspects as a feminist. Do not forget to stay up on my page. I love you so much. Have a great evening.